Welcome to the Stayton Candidate Forum hosted by the Stayton-Sublimity Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Committee. For those that don't know, the Chamber is a not-for-profit organization that exists to support and advocate on behalf of our members and the broader business community. We are not part of the city government. We operate independently of the city for the primary purpose of improving economic vitality and community prosperity by supporting, strengthening, and serving the needs of local business. Our Governmental Affairs Committee meets monthly to discuss local and state issues and ways to inform and advocate for policy that enables businesses to thrive. Today, we are excited to engage the mayoral and city council candidates in a candid conversation regarding their values and vision for the city of Stayton. Now, just a reminder to the candidates, this forum is being live streamed and recorded. This is not a debate. It's an opportunity for you to inform the public of your goals and intentions should you be elected. All candidates will be asked the same set of questions. We randomly selected the order in which the candidates will answer each question. Please respond accordingly. Please keep your responses civil. No personal attacks on other candidates, the moderator, the timekeeper, or the audience. Please do not interrupt another candidate while they are speaking. And candidates will have exactly 90 minutes, or not minutes, 90 seconds rather, in which to respond to the questions. The timekeeper will be timing your responses. That'll be me, I'll be sitting there. And I will hold up a yellow card when you have 45 seconds to go, when you're halfway through, and the red card when you've exhausted your time. And now I'd like to introduce Cass Morrison, who is tonight's moderator. She is a city councilor in Quigley.
Thank you, Carmel. Good evening, candidates. David G., would you pronounce your last name for me, please?
Giglio.
Giglio, thank you. Appreciate that.
You would.
All right, we'll get started by having each of the candidates introduce themselves. Candidates, you will each have 90 seconds to introduce yourselves and share briefly why you are running for your prospective position, as well as any assets or experience that set you apart. We'll start by Mr. Lewis, Ralph Lewis, candidate for mayor.
My name is Ralph Lewis. I've lived in Stayton since better turn on the button.
Yeah, get as close as you can, please,
right.
to the microphone. Thank you.
It's a good way to kill the 90 seconds, huh? I've lived in Stayton since 1994. I've been on the Planning Commission since 1998. I've been on the Parks Board. I've been on the Budget Committee. I was on the Charter Committee. And I guess that gives me experience on how the city government works, who the players are, and I believe that my role will be enhanced by these experiences.
Thank you. Mr. Quigley, candidate for mayor.
Thank you, Tess. Can you repeat the question real quick?
You each have 90 seconds to introduce yourselves and share briefly why you are running for your respective position and as well as any assets or experience that sets you apart.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Brian Quigley. I've been in Stayton for 20 years, I think it is now. Deep family roots on my wife's side, been here for generations. I've raised my kids here. My kids are now moved on to college. I've been on the city council in one form or the other for the last 10 years. Initially elected, I think, to 2 terms. I took a step back in 2019, and then most recently was appointed by the mayor in in January this year. Prior to that, my first experience of getting involved in the community was on the Parks Board, like Ralph mentioned. Subsequent to that, I was on the Planning Commission, which couldn't last too long, like Ralph has, but very interesting time there for me. Budget Committee as well, both charter review committees. So from a standpoint of experience, I think the experience that I have, the broad base of knowledge of the city will help me run for mayor. I'm running for mayor because I believe that there's a need for it, and I try to use my experience on the council to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giglio, candidate for council member.
Yes, I'm David. I'm running for this role because this is where I grew up. This is the town that I love, and I have really enjoyed seeing it flourish the last 10 years. I really think that some of the steps forward that we've taken as a community, especially in our downtown, have just been amazing. This is where I've chosen to move back and raise my family here. And I think what's really motivating me is that I want this to be a place that I want my kids to stay, and I want them to raise their kids here. So I think that starts with, prioritizing safe streets, public safety, prioritizing our values as a community, making sure that's what's driving our policy, prioritizing our good streets as well, and making this a place that's livable, that's walkable. My experience is I am a business owner. I part-own Skyline Video Productions. I run that. I've learned a lot in the private business sector. I've served this last year as the chair of the board in the Stayton-Sublimity Chamber of Commerce. I'm a youth pastor and worship pastor. I'm deeply invested in this community, and really want to just see from the ground up, right? Just us building on what's best about our community.
Thank you. Jordan Ort, candidate for city council.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jordan, and I have lived in Oregon since 2000. So before that, my parents were in the Navy, and we moved around quite a bit. The longest place that I ever lived somewhere was for 6 years. And so when they both retired, we moved back here. And I think that experience, that world experience, really has taught me to understand people and really just, it's not one side or the other, it's not wrong or right, it's just people have different ways of looking at things and how can we come together. And I think that's an asset that I can bring to the table, is that I really just kind of try to look at people as people. I'm a local real estate agent. I've been helping families in the Willamette Valley for over 12 years with home ownership, and I love that. My husband is from the area, and I always said that I want my kids to experience the world, but I always want them to have a home, and that's what I feel about Stayton. And that's why we moved here, was to have a place to call home, and a place that they, like David Giglio said, a place that they can, if they want to go experience the world, they can always come back to. And so I'm looking to make sure that this is a community that our future generations can be proud of.
Thank you. David Patty, candidate for city council.
Thank you so much, Nez. First off, I just want to say thank you to the Chamber for once again facilitating this. Very grateful. Real quickly about me, I moved to Stayton probably over 20 years ago as a child. Since then, I graduated high school. I met my wife here. I ran off and joined the military because I saw a higher calling after I graduated high school from here. I concluded my military service about 4 years later in active duty, and then I came back here and put down roots because I wanted to raise a family in this community. And I continued my military service in the Guard around that time up until about 2018, at which point I had a counselor at the time approach me and encouraged me to run. And ever since then, it's really been a passion for me. I served on the Budget Committee and Finance Committee. In my own employment, I've also served as a labor union representative, where I was charged with negotiating with the states on behalf of employees, so I have experience in labor negotiations. I also have a lot of experience through my last 4 years as a counselor. There's a lot of things that I want to see through that we've laid groundwork for. I got to say, the fires and COVID really kind of put a hitch in our giddy up for that, and I'd like to see a lot of these things through and make sure they're meeting Stayton's needs as taxpayers, as community members. And so that's what I've set out to do here and run and be elected for another 4 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Steve Sims, candidate for City Council.
Good evening, my name is Steve Sims. I am fairly new to the area. I moved back here 6 years ago. I was born here, grew up here, spent my summers here. My grandparents were the actual Stayton family, Ruby and Mac Stayton. I spent a lot of time here growing up. When I turned 18, I couldn't wait to get out of Stayton, so I joined the military and off I went. And I spent a lot of time all over the world. I've been to 40 countries, been to just about every state. And, you know, at the end of my time, we were living in Italy, and I couldn't wait to get back here because I just love the small town. I love Stayton. I love Oregon. And I just, you know, it's all we wanted to do was retire and get back here. We were very, very fortunate to do that. So I have a deep love of this area, the Stayton community. As far as what I've done since then, I serve on the Parks and Rec Board right now currently. I volunteer at the Santiam Teen Center and enjoy retired life for the most part. That gives me a little bit more time to spend time on the council work. The reason I'm running for City Council, I just think involvement is very important. You know, it's a part of your duty as a citizen, a voter. So I'd love to be on the board and help out. I think I have some pretty good skill sets. I've got a good education. Oh, that's it.
Thank you. Carmel, do you have any further instructions for the next part for the candidates?
Yeah, so if you haven't, you can pull out your sheets that have the questions, but just sit them on top. And then do not move to the next question until everyone has answered the first question, okay?
And timekeeper, are you ready?
I'm ready. Oh, just, you guys see that on there, there's an answer order of which order you guys are gonna answer the questions in. Okay, perfect.
And I'll be calling on you individually. And candidates, you have, again, 90 seconds to give your response to these questions. Question number 1, and Mr. Giglio, you are on top first, please. Question number 1, what do you feel is Stayton's single greatest asset?
I think that Stayton's greatest asset is its people, is the families and values that have built this town. I think that you really saw that in this whole canyon area. I mean, I think you really saw the incredible spirit of this place in our response to the wildfires and the way that we came together as a community to love and support and to rebuild the community of the canyon and to come together in that way. So I think in terms of an asset as a community, I think it's about making sure that our policies and the direction as a town preserves and respects and represents that identity as a community. A community that is a small town, is a place where people care for one another, and it's a place where people can raise a family and all of those things. I think that's the biggest thing. So it's all about the tools and the ways that we support that asset through making sure it's a safe community and a place where people want to stay and want to raise a family. So yeah.
Thank you. Jordan Ward, you're next, please.
He took my answer. I think that's probably going to be, I can't speak for other counselors or, other candidates, but it really is the people, and I don't want to parrot what David Giglio said. So if it wasn't the people, I would say that it's, I tell people that Stayton is like our little hidden gem. We really have kind of the best place to live. We have, there's places you can, parks that you can go to, bike trails that you can go on, walking trails. We have our pool that a lot of people come from all around the area to go to. and we have access to all, we're only 20 minutes from Salem. I'm trying to figure out a different thing to say other than the people, really. I really feel like we have the best of all worlds. We're really close to Silver Creek Falls, we're close to Salem if you really want to go there, but we have everything that you really need here. You don't really have to go anywhere else.
Thank you. David Patty, you're next, please.
Well, how can I follow up that? Jeez. I just wanted to say, first off, great answers. I would concur with David's explanation of the people being our greatest asset. They're always willing to step up and just volunteer and do what is needed in this community. And that is uniquely Stayton. I'm saying that as somebody who's traveled the state over and over for different things. You don't see that everywhere. And I just think that is unique to Stayton. Another thing I just want to harp on a little bit is right next to the river. We're on the way to all kinds of different recreation. There's all types of opportunities for people to stop in this community and live, right? Conduct their business, get gas, head to Bend, whatever it is. So I think that geographically we're uniquely positioned. That's one of the bigger assets for us. And then in addition to that, I would say that because we have these great people and because we are positioned here, we have the opportunity to do a lot of things in this town. As far as creation of new parks, Mill Creek Park I'm thinking of soon. I'm hoping to see that constructed at some point if we can go out for a successful grant opportunity coming up here. And I think that, parks can definitely be a huge asset for our town. And I keep thinking about that one and seeing that created as a big asset to this community over the next 4 years. I'm hoping to see that. That's where I'll conclude that answer.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, you are next. I'm sorry, Mr. Sims.
Well, it's hard to reiterate. I mean, we talked about the people, of course, but I think it's the small town atmosphere is what I really like. You see people you say hi to them in town. You got a lot of good small businesses here. I mean, it's a great small community. You have a good mix of good people, good businesses, and it's just a really viable town. And you add the outdoor, I'm an avid fisherman and I love to golf, and just those outdoor opportunities are second to none for a lot of places in the country. And I've been around, I've seen a lot of places, I've seen different areas, and I knew I wanted to come back to Oregon just because of this small town atmosphere and the people that are here, and we have a lot of family here, so that was real important. But it's just a very viable community. It has everything.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Lewis, please.
Well, as already stated, they took my answers. I think the best thing about Stayton is the size. And the second best thing would be its location. Yes, the people are important. Yes, the volunteerism is highly sought and highly appreciated. But I think the fact that Stayton doesn't have the residents in Stayton don't have big city pressure on them. They can do those things. They can feel comfortable volunteering. They can be comfortable leaving their homes because we have a good police department. We have the best drinking water in the state. It's just a wonderful place.
Thank you. Mr. Quigley?
Thank you. I think Carmel was probably looking at the questions that the city manager candidates faced, because that was one of them. And the candidates up here that were involved in that process really sold Stayton from a sincerity standpoint. All the questions or all the answers you heard tonight from these folks is exactly what makes us a great community. And so I would tell you the sense of community. I came here not knowing anybody. The community has embraced me, as they have a lot of people that have come here for different reasons, right? Relocated here. Talking to the folks that are here, there's always a good kitchen to make it a better place. No matter how many times we disagree on something, it always seems we come back together and coalesce and try to make it for the best. The other things that the other folks mentioned is the sense of safety here. I think that's an issue that a lot of people look for as well. want to have a safe community, want to make sure that we can have that way of life that was back in the day and carry it forward. I think that might be creeping up a little bit from a big city perspective, but we can talk about that another time. But overall, it's just a great place to be, and I want to keep it that way, and hence that's the reason why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you, candidates, and that completes question number 1. Question number 2. How do you plan to increase transparency and actually engage citizens in the decision-making process so you are representing the wants and needs of all those you are elected to serve, and not just the one with the loudest or most persistent voice? And we'll start on question number 2 with David Patty, please.
Thank you so much. I thought my name was the second one on there, but it looks like I'm the first since we're not going to have the person in attendance. So, hey, with this one, it starts at the city council meetings, in my opinion, with public comment. That is my best read before the public of what folks want in this town. So I would just say that increasing attendance to city council meetings, you've already seen in my voters pamphlet, I've encouraged folks to come engage, tell us when we're doing things right, tell us when we're doing things wrong so that we can do a better job, or know that we're going in the wrong direction entirely on something. So as far as that goes, specific actions in my next 4 years that I would want to see is maybe some sort of community development director that would specifically be tasked with trying to sell the community itself and what we're trying to do and explain to citizens, because our biggest problem is a lot of times people don't know what we're trying to do, and so they see the outside of it, and then they have an opinion based on that. And I'll see this all the time, and then somebody will be very upset about it, and then when we actually have a conversation about what the real issues are, it's not really something they'd be upset about had they just been present throughout the process. And so anything and everything we can do to market ourselves and get those folks in seats during city council meetings would be my priority for increasing just actual engagement in the decision-making process. As far as transparency, just telling people what we're doing, and I'll have to leave it there because I'm on the red.
Ralph Lewis, you are next. Candidates, if any of you want me to repeat, so you hear the question verbally, I'm happy to do so. Just make that request. Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I think Mr. Patty hit on it. I've been to many meetings. I've been to many times when I've not been on a board or a council and gone to a meeting. I tend to be the only one there. And I'm not bragging, I'm just saying that that's too bad. I think if people want to know what's going on, we need to get them here. I think, I've been approached in the last couple of weeks with surveys about stuff. Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to have somebody who can do a survey of the people in the community to let us all know what they're after. I always think it's too bad that there's nobody at a council meeting or at a planning commission meeting when we're doing things that impact them. The planning commission approved a roundabout at Golf Club Road, but I don't think there were any community people there to tell us what a stupid idea or what a great idea or whatever. I think that's the biggest problem that we have as far as governance. For that matter, transparency. I mean, if you don't come to meetings, you're not going to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giglio, you're next.
Absolutely. I think that this is the most important issue for a city is transparency and public engagement in the process. And I think it's important to understand why people aren't coming to meetings. I think that we have to re-engage the public, and we have to be going to them and inviting them back into this process to regain trust with the public. I think that there is a customer service approach in finding creative new ways to engage and to inform people about what's going on. Some of the ideas that I've had are simply after a council meeting, I'm posting a video on Facebook that's just an explanation of what happened, a five minute video, this is why I voted this way, You know, it's hard. It's very hard to come to every meeting, and it's hard to watch every 2-hour meeting. And I think I think that people should be engaged in the process, but I think it's about finding some creative new ways to engage people in that process so that we are actually listening to the people and not just those loudest voices. I think that's really, really important. So being out there, having conversations with people, and then finding some creative new solutions to re-engage and build trust, again, with the public.
Thank you. Ms. Zort?
Thank you. So some of the things that looking back on the last 4 years on the council, and some of the things that I did previously, one of them was coffee with a counselor. And I did a couple of those for a while. I did have several people attend. And then, like a lot of things, COVID happened. And so that kind of put a spin on things. I would love to start that back up and do that more. That gives the opportunity, I know it says in here, people that shout the loudest or the most persistent voices, but that does give opportunity for people to come. Sometimes this can be a little daunting, sitting in a room with all these people and doing public comment, but also, kind of like what David Julia said, educating people on the process, why they should care about it. I remember back in high school, like we learned about government, we learned about how the federal government worked. We never really learned about how significant and impactful we could be at the local level, and really just educating, community members why it's important and how you can be engaged. We have public comment. You can come here. You can do written testimony. You can do public comment on Zoom even. So we have a lot of ways that people can be engaged, and they don't actually have to come to a meeting. And so really just getting that information out there is important.
Thank you. Mr. Quigley?
Thank you. Ironically enough, I was just talking to a citizen about this last week, and one of their suggestions to me was to change the way the public comments received. And oftentimes what we do at a council level is we have public comment on the agenda during the agenda item. And if you look at it from that standpoint, it's kind of late at that point. So I was talking to Julie about this actually last week, and what I'd like to do and propose to the council is to change the way we have the agenda set up and get the calendar in front of us and have it laid out so those meetings are in advance. And that way we can solicit the public comments long before the meeting comes up. If we get to the point where it's only at the meeting, it's too late, in my opinion. So that was one of the feedback, one of the recommendations from a fellow citizen, and I really take heed of that. Second thing I will tell you is that from a transparency standpoint, don't listen to social media in this town. I'm sorry, but that's the case. There's so much misinformation there that it's just mind-boggling. One of the reasons why I dumped my Facebook page because I couldn't take it anymore. And that's truth, transparency right there. If you want to talk about transparency, there it is for you. But let's go back to having town halls like we used to. We used to go to the Ferris Auditorium at the hospital, and people would come around and talk. And just have a non-agenda, just have times for you to come and chat and talk with us. Last week, we went to the hospital and had a neighborhood meeting because there's parking issues over there. That's the kind of feedback we need to get, and so we can put it on the agenda and start working towards solutions for it. The last thing I will tell you is that I would have an email blast. I guess I won't.
Thank you. Mr. Sims?
Well, I think with transparency comes communication. I spent 30 years in the military as a senior leader, and communication was just so important for everything. And there's a lot of good points made here, and some I may not agree with, but to get the word out, I think, first of all, I think social media is pretty important, especially for the younger crowd. I know Facebook has a lot of stuff on there that's not true and not valid, but I do think information does have to be put out on whether it be Twitter, Facebook, whatever social media platform. And that's how a lot of the younger folks are gonna get interested and come to the meetings, because I'm on the Parks and Rec board. Nobody ever comes to those meetings. It's always empty there. So I definitely agree with it's important for citizens to come to these council meetings. And the other is something we used to always use is like a hotline where you could give feedback to the senior leadership. Some type of account where the counselors see it and can answer questions from people, maybe on the city page. I think that would really pique some interest, is having some sort of hotline where people can ask questions or make comments, or I'm sure there'll be complaints on there, because there always is. But some type of feedback where, and that will get people interested and maybe get them to more of the council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, this is the third question. Regardless of accuracy, the City of Stayton has a long-standing reputation for not being particularly business-friendly. Why do you think that is, and what will you do to address that? And we'll start answers on question number 3 with Jordan Fort, please.
Thank you. This is a big one, because perception can be reality for people, right? So whether or not it's actually true, it's something that we have to deal with. I am thankful for our new city manager who knows, and even before she became our city manager, she knew that it was important to myself and my fellow councilors that this was a big deal and something that we wanted to tackle. I personally think that Stayton needs like some new branding, just a refresher, just kind of a makeover, if you will. And again, I'm thankful for Julia. She has taken this on and is really trying to bridge and build relationships with our local leaders, businesses, and government officials as well to try to change that perception. And I feel like my job as a city councilor can be also going out and just building those relationships, trying to figure out where those breaks are happening and see what we can do to fix those.
Thank you. Brian Quigley.
Thank you. I think perception, as Council Hort mentioned, is a big thing. So I think one of the things that matters with me is that I sit back and I listen, and I try to digest what's going on before I make a decision. And for this particular question, I would ask you to go on the city's website and look at the planning department and look at the stuff he's posted on how to get a business going in Stayton. It's pretty detailed on there as far as what the steps are, what the obstacles may be, what the resources are. If you go on there and look, he has an entire buildable, available land link on there. There's quite a few things on there as far as businesses, what the taxes are, what's available, what's not available, what enterprise zones there are, showing the benefit of having tax abatement at those enterprise zones, giving 3 different examples of businesses that have benefited from it. Is there an issue with us not having, being friendly from that standpoint? Possibly. I think there might be some validity to that. But why is it? So you look at it, and on that page on the city's website, under planning, there's a lot of responsibility for that gentleman. And maybe it's time that the city hires someone to facilitate that aspect of it. And in fact, I would tell you that in 2019, the city commissioned an economic development strategy action plan, which is right here. And in that action plan, it calls for the hiring of a facilitator to do just that for my time.
Thank you. Ralph Lewis.
I think for years, the planning department was a stumbling block for new people coming here, new businesses, contractors, developers. But over the years, that's changed immensely. The process, as Brian has stated, the process is open. It's there for everyone to look at, to see, to at least have some knowledge when they go in and speak with the planning department staff, so that they're all on the same page. I think now the planner is doing an excellent job. I agree that he needs someone to help him, because he's not only the planner, he's also the code enforcement officer. So some of his time is taken up doing that. not to mention other boards and tasks that he is assigned to. So I don't know that he particularly is the problem. I think he was given some of that, and that went on over time. I was thinking about this just now since we started answering this question, but it's like,
Time.
oh, sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Sims, Steve Sims, please.
I think the town is heading in the right direction. Between the planning department and the Chamber of Commerce, we do have a lot of new businesses downtown. And we're going in the right direction. The food carts, that's a great idea to have food carts down there. You know, we've got some new restaurants. That's always been one of the problems with Stayton, is there's not a lot of restaurants, but now we got North 3rd Street Diner, Snow Peak over there with food carts, and Wolfgang's. I mean, we're going in the right direction. I mean, haven't quite gotten over that hump of attracting the businesses downtown, because there's been buildings abandoned there for many, many years, Portland Lau being one. But the city is headed in the right direction. I think with the planning department, they're doing a great job. The Chamber of Commerce is doing a great job. And the council just needs to support the businesses with any permits that need to happen, any of that sort of thing, and continue the direction we're going. And hopefully we can keep attracting more businesses to the downtown. And once that growth starts, I think we'll just keep going up in the right direction and continue to get more businesses downtown.
Thank you. David Gilio.
Yeah, so I think there are aspects of that I would agree with everyone here, but I think I would maybe switch. I think I would change a little bit of the emphasis. I think there really is a degree to which this is true, that there is this perception, and I think it's about an attitude that goes above and beyond to make sure that we are pathfinding for businesses, that when a business comes, they know exactly what they need to do from start to finish. Instead of any surprises along the way with roadblocks that were not foreseen. So making sure that that's communicated from the start. Now that absolutely may be a capacity issue, and I'm definitely open to that answer, that could be a capacity issue where we need to make sure that there's just more people available in that planning department to make sure that those requests are being fielded and that these questions are being answered. But it's definitely still a concern that I've heard from citizens pretty recently, right? That this is still an issue that developers are running into, that businesses are running into. And so we need to make sure that we're continuing to improve in this area. I think there's definitely been improvement, but we need to continue to say what's really our standard as a town to be a pro-business growth community and really be known for that in the area to attract businesses, whether it's industry or small town food carts, right? I think that all of those are really important to this town, and I think we want to make sure that the planning department is not an obstacle to that.
David Patty.
Thank you. Well, first off, the question starts with regardless of accuracy, so I'm just going to go ahead and say something. I don't believe this is accurate. I think over the last 4 years, myself, Councilor Ward, others, we have done a lot of things. We've held staff accountable to try to dispel this perception. And perception is reality. So let's just answer the problem head on, how we're going to solve it, right? So what we've already done is continue to push staff towards making this process easier for new developers to come in if they want to submit an application. They're having these meetings in advance. There's good communication as far as what I've been told. But the real way you do this is you set the standard of being responsive to questions from developers and others, right? And then also that your answers to those questions are consistently given, right? So they know what to expect. And then so when you have two developers, they can talk about Stayton and they have the same experience, right? So that's the number one thing that we need to do. And then the last thing I'm just going to mention since I only have 90 seconds is that in my own 4 years, I actually took a very big swing specifically on businesses in Stayton, and I did attempt to vote in ordinance to allow food carts in specific areas throughout downtown. That was an unsuccessful ordinance, but I think that more new ideas like that in this town are good, and I think think that if we're willing to entertain those as a council and put them forward as a council, we can see some really good things here.
Thank you. We're going to move on to question number 4 now. What challenges do you see associated with public safety, and what solution-oriented ideas do you have to address them? And we will start with Mr. Patty.
I was hoping to go last, but that's okay. I'll go first. You can steal all my ideas here. So a couple different things. Public safety. This is near and dear to my heart. My professional life, I was a crime analyst, loved it. So with this, I would say funding police services where they have the tools to do their job is the number one thing, right? In addition to that, specific to Stayton, we recently had kept a position vacant for over a year or 2 years, essentially to meet our PERS obligation, right? And so now that is filled by a position. I want to see another officer position come this next budget cycle. And I want to see that person be working in the school specifically. Since we had a school resource officer no longer in the high school, I feel like our community suffered, in my own opinion, and I think we need another officer there to know what's going on with our youth. They were neglected during COVID, the youth, and I think that school resource officer, more funding towards the police services so that we have presence and patrols in communities where there's a lot of crime in Stayton, ultimately it's going to be a public good and increase public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Gilio?
Yes, I absolutely agree with all of those things. I think that funding is great. I think that adding that additional officer is going to be a really great step for the town that we are now in a position to be able to do that. I think the resource officer is also a really important thing. I think that safety in our schools is paramount. I think that what I would like to see there, I think we're also, in a situation where we want to make sure that we are really proactive and have a proactive presence in the community, to be in a position where, we are present in these places that do feel more crime. As we were out knocking doors, in West Town, there's definitely a frustration on, petty theft, a lack of feeling like there is a police presence in that area and people that are walking the streets. So we want to make sure that that relationship between the officers and the community is strengthened, and that they know the officers that these reports are getting, that people are getting police reports as to what happened with their case. All of that's something that's really important. I think also it's a really tough thing to challenge to tackle, but that's homelessness. There's a lot of ways that cities' hands are tied in this, but I think we also want, it's important to mention that in this conversation about public safety, to make sure that our streets are safe.
Thank you. Mr. Sims?
Agree with all those points, definitely about the resource officer. I was talking to the teen center kids today. They didn't even know if they had a resource officer at the high school at all or not. But so I think that is important to have the resource officer and to fund the police. But the homeless issue is something near and dear to my heart. I've lived in a number of places, seen how it can be different. And I know, and I watched the working group, and the 9th Circuit Court really did the number on every small town in America by one of their decisions, Boise versus Martin. But the issue is, you have to let homeless stay on public lands, but without a shelter to go to, you can't remove them. So I think we're going to have to partner. Stayton is just too small to fund a shelter and have it manned 24/7. But we're going to have to work, I think, with either Marion County or Salem to come up with some sort of shelter beds, so we have a safe spot that they can go with, that they can spend the night with no rules, because that's one of the issues with the 9th Circuit Court. There can't be a lot of rules with that. But I think the homeless issue is where a lot of the safety issues come into play, and I think that's something that's just going to have to be tackled. And I think that's the most important issue that we have to go after to help that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Ort?
Thank you. These gentlemen all answer.
Pardon me?
Who this was in the next one?
Are you next? Okay, thank you.
I am.
Mr. Quigley, thank you.
I'll start off by telling you that the police budget, if you look at the budget, is $2.6 million. It's quite a bit of money. It's not enough, maybe it is. I think it's a review of how that money's spent to start with. Part of the issue is a lot of unknowns go on right now today. I had a perception that there was a shortage of coverage in my belief, and I asked the chief and I asked the captain about that. And, I went down and sat down with them and had a discussion, and things have changed a lot since my days in law enforcement. I was informed that a lot of time today is spent on DUI enforcement to the point where it's taking them hours and hours to do just one case. So it cleared up a little bit of misconception for me. I think we need to do a better job PR from that PR standpoint. Our officers need to have their morale boosted when they have stuff that takes place in town. You all as a community know what's going on. That hasn't been done in quite some time. It used to be commonplace where here's what took place in the PD today, here's what's going on. Last couple of weeks ago, we had an issue that said drug arrest in Stayton. Well, it wasn't in Stayton, it was in Sublimity. So it's real important that we don't cross those lines and we understand what the guys are doing. Some ideas to make solutions for it. Let's talk about having the reserve program reestablished. Let's look at reestablishing a connection with Sublimity perhaps. That will give more officers for more coverage in town. Thanks.
Thank you. And candidates, I apologize. My list is different from yours, so Ms. Zord, are you next?
Yes.
Thank you.
So you caught me off guard. Okay. So these gentlemen for me, they kind of hit a lot of the issues. But really one of our challenges, and this specifically here in Oregon, is the tying of the hands of our police force and what they are able to do and not able to do. The arrests that they're not able to make really because the jail won't take them. And so I would agree that PR is a big thing, and to explain and educate the community on what we can and can't do as a community when it comes to enforcing certain laws, homelessness being one of them, and the challenges with that. We did a work session on that, and really just, if you go back, I'd really love for all of you to go back because it really will shed some light on some of the issues and difficulties we've been having. But some of the solutions to that is to let you all know that if you see something, don't just say, oh, doesn't matter, nobody can do anything about it. Call it in. Because if we can say that there's a pattern of behavior happening, then we can try to do something about it. And then we can, within reason, try to work. I'm not saying it's a hopeless lost cause, but we are trying to work on solutions currently on the council, and I want to continue to work on those solutions. I don't have all the answers, nobody really does, but I am committed to working towards finding those within our reason with what we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I think we have a great police department. I know several of them. I know that in some cases they're very frustrated because of rules and regulations handed down to them by the legislature in Salem. I know that the homeless issue, for example, that's such a knotty issue because the kinds of things that most of us think, well, people aren't supposed to be in the park after 10 o'clock. Well, the courts and the state legislature has said, no, you can't use that one. So it's almost, and like has been said here, we don't have a place for homeless people to go to. Salem has a nice shelter, actually has more than one. And as far as some of the homeless people, they have issues of their own that prevent them from accepting help. And I think that's probably enough.
Thank you. Candidates, we're moving to number 5, question number 5 now. What do you think is the one thing residents are most concerned about, and what will you do to address that? And we'll start the answers with Ralph Sims, please.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve Sims.
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns, I'm going back to the homeless issue. I think that's a very big concern in this community. And for the folks that live and work here, I mean, I see it on my street, East San Yam. I don't look down by the park, but I think it's a lot worse down by Pioneer Park per se. But, I mean, it changes the livability of the city if you have a lot of homeless. Just go into Portland and look. The issues there. But I think that is one of the biggest concern is the spread out to some of the smaller towns of the homeless issue. And that's just something we're gonna have to tackle. I know a lot of a lot of their hands are tied for that, but it's a really difficult issue, and I think that's where we need to go to help the safety and livability of the city.
Thank you, Steve. Jordan Ort?
Thank you. So I think the single biggest concern can lump a lot of things together, and that is livability in the community. So we've all voiced the reasons that we live here, and probably the reasons that all of you live here, is because we love the small town feel. We love being able to walk around with our kids or grandkids, walk our dogs on the streets, but we want those to be safe, right? That includes dealing with the homelessness issue. It includes improvement of our infrastructure, so that when I'm pushing my double stroller down the street, when I first ran, that's actually why I ran, because I was pushing a double stroller down the street, and it was really hard because the streets are just in such disrepair in certain places, and that's a big deal. Housing, supply, and prices are a big deal, and those are all things that the current council, which I'm on, and what I want to see happen in the future is I want to improve our infrastructure, find solutions, like the last question said, is this is an ongoing thing, so find solutions to make sure that our town is safe. And our housing supply is only going to get better if we have more of it, so improving the supply, so the prices go down.
Thank you. David Gilio.
Yes, I think that in some ways, I would absolutely agree with what's been said. I think the way I would phrase it is, I think that the biggest single concern for those that live and work here is losing our way of life, is losing our small town way of life. And I think there's a number of issues that hit on that. I think it's the feeling of the encroachment of Salem onto our community, and that the problems that used to not be problems, I would say crime, homelessness, those two specifically, I think are very much connected to the proximity of Salem's growth, and the ways that we just can't really avoid some of that. But how do we keep our place safe? And I think that's really what it comes down to is making policies that are going to prioritize the safety of our community and making sure that we have very, very careful growth. The steps we take towards growth are careful, and that we are prioritizing our safe streets, maintaining our streets, and making sure that the roads that we are on, we don't have to worry about crime. We don't have to worry about being too close to traffic. We don't have to worry about a bad road that's just hard to drive on. So I think that's the biggest issue and a concern that people are facing is losing that way of life.
Thank you. Ralph Lewis.
I think the single biggest issue in this city is the infrastructure. Our infrastructure is old. And I can tell you, like Councilor Ord, I used to push my wife in a wheelchair. And in some places, you have to be in the street. The sidewalks are messed up. There's no way to to walk on them. Certainly, there's no way to navigate them with a wheelchair. The only solution that I can think for that, and I'm not deeply involved in the Public Works Department and how they finance things, but we're gonna have to have a bond or something, or we're gonna have to get a grant, or have a giant big sale. I don't know, but there has to be money for this, because I know that, for example, there's supposed to be a new sewer pipe go into Ida Street. And if it weren't for the federal government, we wouldn't be able to do that. So that kind of thing has to happen. We need to be, in order to keep this place livable and lovable, we need to fix the streets. There are some streets, I don't know if any of you live over on Fifth Avenue, for example, between Marion and Jefferson.
Thank you. David Patty.
Thank you. First off, homelessness, yeah, definitely a big concern for the citizens of Stayton. I think that's already been kind of touched on really well here, and I agree with a lot that's been said. So I'm going to focus on what Ralph identified just now, and that's the roads, right? I don't think that the city of Stayton really realizes how dire that situation is, in my opinion. Last June, I think it was like the 20th, we had a meeting where we got new information about how our roads are going to be rated, how they're going to be prioritized for repair and maintenance. And I got to tell you, it was scary. Currently, we have about $400,000 devoted towards road repair and maintenance. If I'm remembering my figures correctly, sounds like we need to increase that to about 230% of current spending levels on those roads. That's what was identified to me. And in addition to that, our roads in this town, about 42% of them, they need rehabilitation or full rebuild. All right. So what we've done on council is to ensure to lay groundwork where we can successfully go out for grants and ease the burden of the taxpayers in Stayton surrounding this issue. That's the thing I'm going to continue to do, is keep trying to get grant funding for some of the roads that are really terrible, while still trying to maintain our transportation system at its current level, so that we can slowly see some improvement versus staying the same or slowly deteriorating because we're not addressing the maintenance around this town. So I think that's the biggest concern that Stayton should have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Quigley.
I think from an overall standpoint, to echo what David and Ralph both said, is infrastructure, but let me emphasize it a little bit more. Your roads, absolutely, that was the impetus behind me running for council the first time. But from a broader perspective, when it comes to infrastructure, Stayton really needs to have a second source of water. And that's one of the things that we're working on right now. The last 2 wells they tried to find were no good. If something happens to the water source at the Sandigan River, we're kind of going to be in a tight spot. From another standpoint of infrastructure, it's the number of people that are coming here that don't pay into the system. And let me give you an example of that. There's going to be a new development that's going to be on 3rd Street, right next to the retirement village. It's going to be 72 new units, and the city will receive $13,000 a year for that. And that is a pilot program. It's called Payment in lieu of Taxes. And I think the city missed an opportunity there for us to really try to recover the cost that that project's going to have on the community. Certain folks believe that they just want to put more and more people in without having a way to pay for it. We really got to be careful when it comes to that. I think from that standpoint, everything has to be analyzed, it has to be looked at, it has to have a balance. And it doesn't make sense from the standpoint of keeping up with the requirements to maintain our community, then I would question it.
Thank you. We're moving now to question number 6. And we'll start with Ralph Lewis. How will you embrace partnerships in order to preserve and/or expand community assets? What does that look like?
I guess staying with the street issue, I think a lot of our streets, particularly our major streets, are county roads. We need to fully embrace our relationships with the county to keep those maintained and usable, because if they break down, we're really in deep doo-doo, so to speak. I believe some of the changes that have happened in the planning department that make it easier, more open for developers to come here have improved a lot of the possibilities. There are new apartments being built on Golf Club Road. As Brian said, new apartments will be built, those are low-income apartments on 3rd Ave. We need to know how to play that game because we, as a community, really got kicked in the teeth with that in lieu of taxes business. I believe it's, instead of getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, we're only getting at $13,000 for that development. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Sims.
I think we hit on this point with the planning department and easing the burden for businesses to come in. So I think that partnership is going to be really important to try to ease the burden, what the requirements are for new businesses to come in. And I think we can expand our community with a positive business requirement. I think that's one of the important things. And infrastructure obviously is something really important. I've driven the roads here also. And I think we're going to have to really work with the county and the federal government. All the infrastructure bills, there's billions and billions of dollars out there trying to get the grants to work on our roads because we all know they're in pretty bad shape. We all drive around downtown, some of the off the main drag streets. So I think our partnerships for as far as bringing dollars in is going to be really important to work for those grants from the federal government, try to help our infrastructure out, and just working with the planning department to make it a business positive environment to bring more businesses in, and expand our assets in the community.
Thank you. Next is Brian Quigley.
Thanks, Hans. To answer that question, I think it's going to be a combination of things. Many of you might remember that back before the interchange was on Highway 22, there was a lot of people vying for that funding to get that particular project completed. And I think if you look at the time, our mayor at the time pulled some strings, did some collaborative work with the other folks that were looking at receiving that funding. And that was all the way to Polk County. I think maybe Lynn County had some involvement, and everyone was scrambling for the same pot of money. And through a collaborative effort at the leadership level with the mayor, we were able to have that particular interchange developed. So I would start with that. I've already talked to Commissioner Willis. He's offered us his support from the county level, from a public works standpoint, from a funding source to help us, give us some guidance. Back to Ralph's point about the county roads, I think there's some opportunity there. But if you look at the industrial portion of the west portion of Stayton, the industrial land out there, currently Sedcor is helping us on that development piece. I want to make sure that stays in place and that relationship strengthened. We've got to get some more development over there, and that will increase the amount of the business coming in, and that leads to higher property taxes and more revenue for us to use. So.
Thank you. David Patty.
Thank you. I would just say, first off, before embracing any partnership with any other organization as a city, the first thing we really have to do is identify clear expectations of both parties, right? So what are we going to do as a city? What is this partner organization going to do? I would say in my time already on 4 years on council, I've seen successful examples of that with partnerships with the county, where we've been able to do more road maintenance through slurry seals, chip seals, that kind of thing, where we're spending some dollars and the county's spending other dollars, and this partnership has actually increased the amount of road that we're able to maintain. So examples like that I would embrace, but again, this has to start clear expectations on both parties. We don't want to have handshake deals in this town where people aren't clear on what's expected of either party, because that's where the partnership breaks down. I think that myself and other councilors have seen where that's failed And I want to avoid that as much as possible. So the way I would embrace this is just being upfront and honest about what we're able to do as a city and what we expect in return. Like Councilor Quigley has already hit on this, I think that our partnership with the county could be a lot more successful in a lot of different ways as far as different cost-sharing projects for infrastructure and things like that. Those are just the things that jump out to me about this question. But as far as expanding community assets, I would just think about like the library and our partnership with CCRLS and things like that, where we're having more materials and distribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Ort.
Thank you. So we talked about building relationships, being on the council, working with the county commissioners, and then also on the state level, having relationships with legislators. They have legislative days, they have legislative hours that you can go in and talk with them. And I have previously built relationships with Senator Girard and Representative Kate. And one of the biggest things that Representative Kate told me is that she has such a big area, and most of them do, right? You have a lot of constituents. And it's hard for them to go, hey, what do you need? Hey, what do you need? And instead of them coming to us, we come to them. So my job and our role is to stay on top of the projects that we have, make sure that the projects that we want to see get grant funding at any level are shovel ready so that we can say, hey, we have this project. And so they know that we have these things coming up and they can say, hey, Stayton is ready, and give them that money. So really it's reaching out to them, continuing those relationships. Because of that partnership, I was able to help the city get money for our police department from ARPA dollars from Representative Kate and Girard and Senator Girard for their security system.
Thank you. David Gilio.
Yes, I think that there's been a lot that's really good here that's been touched on. I've also had conversations with Commissioner Willis as well as Ed Deal about these conversations on how do we we have potential here to even have an opportunity to have a little bit more power in the state legislature for our community. I think there's a real potential for that. And I think we want to make sure that we are, we're building really good relationships with that representative, with him as well as Senator Girard, to be able to make sure that we're prioritizing the projects that matter to us when there is an opportunity to get some state dollars. I also think the county relationship is probably the most important one. We really do. I think we have many of our major thoroughfares are county roads, and so how do we work with them to make sure that those are updated? I also something I do want to touch on is I think that this has been touched again. I think there is an opportunity for renewing some relationships with Sublimity as well, to be able to come together on some issues, as well as I think approaching the chamber, RDS, and some local businesses as well, to be able to invite some more people at the table to find some creative solutions to some of these issues. I think inviting in private investment and some of those can be a really good opportunity as well. I think partnership and collaboration, I think there's been missed opportunities there, and that's something I think that we can really continue to improve on, because I think there is some opportunity there.
Thank you. We're moving to number 7, question number 7 now. How can we attract or incentivize higher wage employers to our area? And we'll start with Mr. Quigley, please.
Thanks, Cass. It's some of the stuff I've been talking about already. We have that 16 acres of industrial land to the west of us, off of Wilco. And that's been sitting there for quite some time. We have some challenges as far as the water table level goes over there, some infrastructure level issues, but it is the enterprise zone. If you look at the companies that have taken advantage of it, you have Red Bill, you have Lift Tower, Harvester, and Willamette Valley Lumber, I believe. Those folks came in and they took advantage of the tax abatement and they brought jobs to town. That, I believe, is our biggest possibility over there. It's our biggest asset. Not only will it facilitate bringing jobs here, but it will increase the tax base, as I mentioned before. And that will help us get some more funds that we can use for the streets and improve the infrastructure that we have now. And the second portion of that is how those folks are going to need educated workers. And so what do we do from that standpoint? how do we increase the knowledge base, the education base? It starts at the school level. What do we do as a city that can partner with those folks to make sure that education is there, to set career paths, to give the kids that are coming up today an idea that these types of positions are out there, here's the requirements for those kind of jobs, here's what the potential income is. It really starts there and gives them interest. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve Sims.
There's a fine line, I think, with the incentives for some of the higher wage jobs. I mean, do we offer them a tax incentive where we minimize our tax and we don't get that base for our infrastructure? But I think that's what really does bring in a lot of the higher wage jobs, are the incentives that the city will provide as far as taxes. And of course, there's the education base. I'm well familiar with that. And it's tough because, you know, we have a housing shortage here. There's not a lot of extra housing for some of the higher wage folks to move in. So then we have to expand the available housing. And that wouldn't be low income apartments. It'd more likely be single home units to bring those folks in. But I think it would take a combination of things. Obviously, the knowledge base, the tax incentives, more housing. That's a real problem here in town, I think, with the single family homes. We have the new lower income units going in, but I think we'll need more than that. But it'll be a combination of things to bring in some more employers to the area.
Thank you. Mr. Patty?
Thank you. Myself, as an individual counselor, I think I might distinguish myself a little bit here from Mr. Sims. I may steer away from tax incentives myself. I think more in favor of what I would like to see is lowering the dollars and cents of a startup company coming to town. The way we would do that is lessening the burden on them for system development improvements when they come in. And so part of that's already been done, right? So we mentioned the roundabout earlier. Part of the whole goal of that is to lower that amount that a developer would have to pay when they came in there and they brought these jobs to this community. So I would just say that we're already trying to do that. I want to be competitive with other municipalities as far as what an employer coming to my community has to do. And I want them to choose my community because not only the character of Stayton fits whatever it is they're trying to do, but they also have enough skilled labor in this area to where they can meet the demand for the jobs of whatever business they're trying to run. So I mean, I think it starts in schools, like it's already been said, but you know, ultimately, I think that we need to lessen the burden for system development improvements for a new employer coming to town. Because I think that's where we as a municipality can become competitive with other towns. So let's choose Stayton instead of your Silverton or whatever. You name the small town community that we're competitive with.
Thank you. Mr. Gilio?
Yeah, I think that I agree. There's a combination of factors that are going to be in play here. I think it's taking a look at incentives, it's taking a look at system development, ways that we can really incentivize development in that industrial district, as well as elsewhere. I think, you know, we also want to have a place, I think, in our education system and in the current employers that we have here to really be encouraging, I think, entrepreneurship, making it easy to start a business here and easy to start a place that's a ground up. I think there's a lot of, you know, high wage opportunities when someone starts a business and when someone has a locally, a place that just grows locally. I also think that's probably where your likeliest long-term high wage employers are going to come from, are going to be places that start small and grow. And so being able to be a place that's easy to grow in and a place that's going to be able to support that growth through a skilled workforce and all of that, I think that's really, really important. And I think long term, that's probably the best and most healthy approach to be prioritizing that. But I also am absolutely for, like, we do need to have, I think, some replacement industry for some of the lost jobs in the cannery and really being able to offer a range of employment options for the people who live and work in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Patty and Mr. Julio both indicated that they went through the school system here and then left. We can't have that if we're gonna improve the place. People need to stay here. People need to use everything here to their advantage, which ultimately turns out to be our advantage as citizens who do live here. I think working closely again with the county, with those legislators who live in our community or are part of, they're the ones who speak for us at the state legislature. So we need to work with them. I agree with Mr. Patty that it's too bad that we have to give big businesses tax incentives so that they don't have to pay taxes for years and years and years, and we lose out on that money because money seems to be one of the big issues that we have in our town, to keep things up, to make things better. So anyway, that's what I have.
Thank you. Ms. Ort?
Thank you. So one of the questions previously was the perception of being a business-friendly town. And so that's probably where we need to start, is improving that reputation of being business-friendly. And we've talked about ways that we can do that, but that is something that we need to do. So before you're gonna go out and try to entice someone to come here, we need to fix up the areas that they're gonna be in, right? So that includes that area over on Gulf and Shaft Road. And that's why the current council is working towards that project, so that, again, like I said last time, so that when we have, when we have it all ready, we can say, hey, we've got this project ready, and now we can go out, look for grant funding and other opportunities to get that fixed up. Because as David Patty mentioned, whoever wants to build in that area across from Rob's is gonna have to, it's gonna trigger a traffic improvement there. And they will have to bear the burden of that, and no one's gonna wanna do that. And so in order to do that, we are trying to make sure that we have this ready, and we can say, hey, come build here. We have this project that can basically be triggered once you start building there. So that's one of the ways that we can attract people here. Attract people here is making sure we have shovel-ready projects.
Thank you. We're moving to question number 8 now. The position for which you are running requires a significant time commitment to be present, prepared, and effective. How does this fit into your current commitments and your lifestyle? And we'll start with David Gilio, please.
Yes, I would say that this is definitely the biggest thing that I was thinking about that would may have prevented you from running, because I definitely do have commitments. I help run a business, I'm a pastor, and I think it's about prioritizing and finding that time. I think often people use that kind of as an excuse, as a reason to wait to be involved in public service. But I think that I provide a lot of energy and ability to be able to connect with people, and have been able to do that through the chamber, through other ways. And so that's kind of, I think, the asset is. Like, I could wait till I don't do any of those things, or I could do it now and find the time. And I think that there are multiple nights a week where I'm able to devote and be out in the community. And so yeah, it's definitely a time commitment. I think it's a really important thing to spend the time to really know the particulars of the budget, where we're heading, all of those things, being prepared on time. And that's something that I'm used to, and I've done in all the other commitments that I've been a part of, and something I will continue into this. It's definitely a little bit of a balance, right? But I think that my other commitments and the ways that I've been able to balance those, and taking a few things off to bring this on, I think that's actually prepared me for this challenge to be able to be fully present in this.
Thank you. Brian Quigley.
Thanks, Tess. I think this is really a second job. Most people don't see it that way. The level of commitment that it takes to make sure you're engaged on what's going on and taking place requires not just 2 meetings a month. It's everything that's done prior to those meetings. It's all the phone calls with staff. It's all the interaction with the community, hearing their commitments, hearing their complaints, hearing the whole desires, and trying to figure out how to balance that. For myself, I've been doing it for quite a number of years, and I think it's not going to be it won't be an obstacle for me. In fact, I know that one of the reasons that I desire to be mayor is because I want to make sure that that political face of the community is out there, out in front, moving forward. I will tell you that I changed my career within the last year. I was in the private sector for 26 years. I'm not anymore. That's given me a chance to slow down a little bit, believe it or not. And that will give me more time to invest in the community and try to really go out there and meet the commitment of what it takes to be mayor.
Thank you. Ralph Lewis.
As far as time goes, I'm retired. So I can do a lot of things that just about at the drop of a hat that some may not. I think it's important that as mayor, that we are out front. We are going to meetings. We are visiting with those state and county legislators so that they know where we are. They know who we are. They know why we are. As far as fitting into my lifestyle, it's my lifestyle. I'm on boards and committees, and I volunteer for things. I deliver Meals on Wheels right out of this building tomorrow. So it won't be too much of a crush for me to be mayor.
Thank you. Jordan Ort.
Thank you, Dennis. What came to mind with this question is that you make time for what's important to you. And I kind of joke around that some people have hobbies, but I run businesses and I advocate for what I think is right. And my desire to run for city council previously and now is that I care about the community and I want to be part of the solution. I don't just want to sit back and think someone else will do it, because that's just not the way that I work. And so I make time for this. My kids know that this is important to me. I am a small business owner, and so I make my own schedule, and I'm pretty good at juggling, not literally, figuratively, and that just allows me to be able to do the things that I want to do, and I have the time to do it. But again, it goes back to making time for what's important, and this is important to me, so I tend to show up.
Thank you. Steve Sims.
That's another pretty easy question for me. I am retired. I had a very difficult career, long career. Worked a lot of hours where I wasn't able to volunteer for anything or do a lot of extracurricular activities. But now I'm able to do that, which makes it very nice. I look forward to the challenge. I would love to be involved and put a lot of time into this. And that's just something I have that availability now. That, I'm very fortunate that I do, and I look forward to the challenge. I'd love to be a counselor.
Thank you. David Patty.
Thank you, Taz. Yeah, so first off, I would just go ahead and say that as far as the time commitment, when I first read this question, it was making me think of my life back in 2018. At the time, I had quite a few more roles. My son was very small, which left my wife very busy, and she was very supportive of me at the time and allowing me to do this. And she still is. I would say my wife Katie is my rock, and she manages our family while I'm off doing this because she recognizes the purpose of what I'm doing here and how important it is, right? So I would just say to this, I feel like I have more bandwidth for more time, given some of the roles I've given up since 2018, and then my child is now 4, and it's a little more manageable to go to Pioneer Park and play with him. So I would also say I'm very approachable in this community, frequently alongside my wife and my kids. I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm willing to meet folks. I always have. I've always just put forward my email as the gatekeeper to that, and then moving forward, hearing the issues from individual voters. That's how I plan to do that. I also would like to be doing some bi-weekly meetings with the city manager to go ahead and be abreast of all the issues that are going on, and then communicate my individual thoughts as a counselor to her to get direction for the city. That's how I would be doing that.
Thank you. Candidates, we're moving to question number 9 now, which is the final question, the final prepared question for you. If you could only accomplish one thing during your term, what would you choose and why? And we get to start with David Gillio, please.
Yeah, if I could accomplish only one thing in my term, it would be fixing the roads. I mean, I think that is very important. I think it's not possible in 4 years. I think that it is an incredible challenge in front of us. I would love to see. I think we do have to maintain, and I think we have to increase that budget and really find ways that we're going to be able to review our spending, to be able to increase our street fund, and also to find those collaborative relationships and grant opportunities to be able to do that. I think, the area around, I think Old Town, I mean, I think that has such a potential to be such an incredible place next to downtown, those streets in between downtown and Pioneer Park. But really, I mean, we all know those streets. Those streets are non-existent and they're incredibly expensive to fix. And so if I accomplished one thing, it would be that. And I think the second thing would be, I guess that's not actually the question, so. But it would really be community involvement, making sure that that's prioritized and part of what's, and driving what's happening.
Thank you. Steve Sims.
The one thing that I would like to accomplish is I would like to see Mill Creek Park break ground and start building that. I know there's going to be some challenging with funding. It's a multi-phase project, a very large park, and it's going to be quite expensive to build. But that would be I'm all about city livability and the park system, and I would love to see that park started and we could move forward to that, because that park is just amazing. Looking at the plans for it, it is going to be something pretty special for this town.
Thank you. Jordan Nord.
Thank you. So this is actually why I decided to run again, because 4 years really wasn't a lot of time to accomplish a lot of things. And one of those was the roads. I looked back and I was like, that's why I ran, and it felt like we didn't really get very far with it. But we had a lot happen during that time. But I would say, really looking at if I'm able to have next term, I would love that, would be community engagement. I want to see all the roles on our committees and commissions and boards. I want to see all those filled with people. I want to see a room like this when we have our city council meetings. I want to hear from the community, because that means that you care. I know that you care, but it means that you have buy-in too. And so if you are on these roles or committees and commissions, then you're actively and proactively making choices for the community and shaping the community that you live in. When we're up here, we're 5 people, 6 people in the mayor, sorry. But we're making these decisions because we think that's, what's best for the community. But you can also have the opportunity to shape what that looks like. So I really want to see some more community engagement and see more people involved, and that would be my goal for next term.
Thank you. David Patty.
Thanks again. So I already mentioned my thoughts on the roads. David's already said what he thinks. I think fixing all the roads in 4 years is a pipe dream. I wish we could do it, but since we can't, this is what I would like to do, and this is the one thing I would like to accomplish. I would like to see the road repair and maintenance become sustainable in this town, to where we're not on a downward trajectory of deterioration on all the roads. We're actually devoting sufficient funds to the maintenance and repair and rebuild where we can, to where they're improving and not deteriorating, essentially. Because that's kind of the information we got back in June is, hey, here's current funding levels, here's what you could fund them at, and here is hopelessly, millions of dollars a year that we don't have, right? And so for me, I want to see this become sustainable, and I'm open to solutions on this as we go forward, because it's going to be a long-term kind of thing figuring this out. But that's what I want to leave office doing, is saying the roads are going to become better as I leave office, because we set them on this trajectory to where they're improving and not deteriorating.
Thank you. Brian Quigley.
For the last 10 years, I think I'm trying to achieve the one thing that I've been trying to do. And if I can create an environment that continues to bring families into the community for generations and track business in doing so, and have a place for our kids to grow into the future outside of all the distractions of life, and I did a good job.
Thank you. Ralph Lewis.
Well, I can't say the streets because that's already been used several times. I think community participation is probably the biggest issue I believe, other than the streets, that we have. We need to make sure that it's in the open. It's out in the open. What happens at city council meetings, what happens at planning commission meetings, excuse me, is out in the open, that people know. And that people can know that they can call us, they can come and see us, they can be with us when we're downtown and express themselves. And know that we're not just going to blow them off. We talk about how much time it takes. I was on the city council for 2 years, and it took us that whole 2 years plus a little bit to get Virginia paved all the way from sidewalk to sidewalk. So it does take a lot of time. But I think having people know what's going on is priority one.
Thank you. It's audience participation time now. Carmel, do you want me to speak to that, or are you going to?
Sure. We're right on time. This is great. I'm going to read what I...
At this time, we are going to open the forum to audience questions. You may either ask a question that was not addressed, or you may ask for clarification from a particular candidate regarding a statement they have made previously during the forum. Please raise your hand if you wish to clarify a candidate's previous answer to any question.
Don't be afraid.
Just open it up to asking.
Is it only for clarification, or can you?
No, you can ask a question.
You may ask any question now at this time, audience members.
You may just want to have her repeat it, because we won't do it on video.
Have them come up to the microphone so they can free.
Please.
Behind, I don't want to. Thank you. My name is Wendy Stone. I am a lifetime resident of Stayton. I've heard a lot of talk tonight about how to make Stayton better, what's good about Stayton. And what I would like to hear from every candidate, and starting at this end, going that way, because we haven't done that yet. How do we balance building and bringing more industry here to support what we've got and what we love without destroying the small town feel that everyone that left came back for?
Well, that's probably the hardest question asked tonight, because that's the key. Getting people who love this place to stay here, to let their friends and colleagues know that this is a good place. It is difficult because, I think about one of the questions talked about having high-paying jobs. Well, if we were to get that sort of thing, there is the possibility that we would have to annex more of our urban growth boundary to build houses for those people who came here. Because unless they're very creative, I don't see too many of them buying any houses on Fifth Avenue, because Fifth Avenue doesn't exist really. So that is a difficulty, and it is a concern. The idea of having some big company come here and we give them a tax incentive to build and to do things limits our ability to fix the things that need to be fixed. So it is kind of a naughty thing. On the other hand, I think we need to work more closely, or as closely as we can, with the chamber. Because as I see the chamber, I don't know fully exactly what all the chamber does. You have 95 seconds?
Mr. Quigley?
I think Ralph just talked about it, right? This town's it's an interesting identity, I think, at some point. There's an interesting dichotomy we discussed tonight. It's, the council identifies the issues with infrastructure, and they put a plan in place to try to address that. And then all of a sudden, the folks that don't want that, or have said, what's going on, wasn't aware of this, start speaking up. So we have these two sides where there's a desire to keep that small town atmosphere that we have, the stuff that we love so much about this town. But at the same time, you hear folks saying we have to have more development, we have to have more jobs come here. So it's a very difficult balancing act. To my point, I will refer to what I've always talked about, and Ralph talked about it a little bit, but it's our ability to self-govern. Our ability to self-govern is slowly being chipped away. And I'll give you a couple examples. Annexation for the very start of it. Our annexation is in the charter, it's 3 acres, right? It has to go to voters for approval. The legislature slipped that away from us. They took it away. Now it's to the point where any developer that wants to come in that has a concern with why you don't grant annexation can give us a lawsuit for that. So it changed the size of the square footage on property development. We used to have bigger lots, right? Now we have a minimum of 7,500 square feet. We can shove everybody in there. So very difficult balance and act, and how do we do that? And that's why really, from the sense of community standpoint, it really takes more folks that come talk to us.
Mr. Gilio?
Yeah, I think this is something I think that we're all really unified on is this desire to keep to maintain that small town feel, to maintain really our small town identity, while to do some very careful growth. That's always the term that I use is very careful growth, because I don't even think it's necessarily a lot of growth in population right now. I think that he talks about Councilor Quigley talks about how the legislature has taken more of those rights away, and more of those even self-governing rights will be taken away if we pass the 10,000 person threshold. So there really is I'm very open until that changes, unless that changes, and maybe it will change. I would be very much for doing what we can to stay under that threshold so that we can have that self-government, so that we can have that direction. So I think it is about making those choices. And in terms of the tax incentives and stuff, I don't think it is a blank check. I don't think it's we are always doing this. I think it's really looking at a situation, looking at and weighing what are the pros and cons of this industry coming to this area of those things. So I do think there are ways that we grow smart. In terms of our business, in terms of our business community, in terms of improvement, growing the improvements in our community that don't necessarily actually translate to a lot of population growth. I do think that we're running into some limits that if some things don't change, that I think would make it almost impossible to maintain that small town feel.
Thank you. Jordan Hort?
Thank you. So Stayton is gonna grow. We have to, and we just have to, or else we're not gonna have businesses stay. The only way that we can support the businesses that we have in town is by growth. So David Gillia talked about, I think of smart growth when I think of that. So that's making sure that we don't become a bedroom community. There's a lot of people in Salem that think that Stayton is a bedroom community, and we absolutely do not think of ourselves that way, and we have no intention of being that. And so that means that growing our population with our jobs and our businesses, right? So that the people that live in our community can have jobs here, they stay here, and they can entertain themselves here. If you can't entertain yourself here as a teenager, as a young adult, you're gonna go other places, you're gonna wanna go other places. So how do we keep people here? We really instill in our future generations why this is the community that they wanna stay in. And that does include growing at some point, but making it so that we're growing all of our industries balanced, and that, Wendy, that really is the key, right? Is to figure out what that balance is. So.
Thank you. David, Patty?
Will you repeat the question? I'm just kidding. No, I would just say to that, I knew she was gonna say smart growth, I'm with her on that, that's great. I would also just say like incremental growth, so not a ton of developments all at one time. I realize people are looking around, they see these apartments coming up and stuff like that. At this point, and to David Gillia's point, once we exceed 10,000, there's certain decision-making powers that are taken away. I'm fearful of that for Stayton, and so me personally, I don't want to see us annexing a lot of high-density annexations into the town in general. That's my personal belief. And so due to those issues, exceeding 10,000 in population and losing the discretionary decision-making power after that time, I think I would like to see some of the legislation that's currently in effect in Oregon changed. I think that laws don't have to stay the way they are. I think it's really unpopular in Oregon in general, and so I would continue to advocate at the state level to see this changed or repealed altogether. So that's kind of how I would like to see Stayton grow incrementally, and then that way we could continue to celebrate and honor the traditions that make Stayton Stayton. So I'm thinking the Summerfest, other big celebrations, things that are put on in this town that really maintain our character. The Ghost Walk Tour, I keep thinking of that, going around Stayton during the Halloween. I'm thinking Halloween. Those types of traditions and things that make Stayton Stayton. Celebrating and honoring those. That's how I would do that, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Sims?
Oregon is growing, and I think a lot of people are moving out of some of the cities, Portland, Salem in particular, and they're coming to some of these smaller communities. So there are going to be a lot of folks moving out here, and to support these high-paying jobs, we need smart people, people with craftsmen, with skills, skill sets, degrees, and with these higher-paying jobs, we need those also for our own businesses to maintain our own business environment. So I think we are going to grow. I think a lot of it is how fast we allow it to grow. The town of Stayton will grow in population. There's just no doubt about that. We're going to have to have some of these developments where we have single-family homes come in, because that's what a lot of the folks that are moving out of the cities are going to want to buy here. It's pretty limited. But with those people moving here, we're supporting our businesses. The downtown can grow, but we are going to grow. Hopefully, we can maintain that small town livability here, which is why I came back, why we moved here from Italy, because I want that. So it's going to be a balance game. I think it really is, with how fast we allow the population growth and the development and the building of apartments and houses here.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Carrie?
No, I do. Yes, you do.
You guys can hear me, can't you?
No,
Yes.
they can't hear you on the camera. I'm sorry. Nobody at home will be able to hear you.
Well,
I'm
that's
so
probably
sorry.
Hi, Carrie Sessoms, architect at 1501 East Gwinnett, Covered Bridge Cafe. So I have like a few things, like 3 things. David, you're doing great. I was a little worried about you. And I just want you to know that you are handling yourself like a champion. So great job to you. Jordan and David Patty, what will you do? How will you redefine the next 4 years from what you've learned the first 4 years? What will be different?
That is a really good question. That is something that I have been thinking about. It goes back to that. Well, first of all, we say we don't want career politicians, right? We want regular people up here. But there's a learning curve that happens with it. So the last 4 years really have been, a roller coaster with all the issues that we've had to deal with, and not just running the community, but all the literal fires that I've been having to put out. But just taking that knowledge base and really being able to figure out the trajectory of the community and what that looks like is just, I'm having a hard time explaining this, I'm sorry, but I just feel more confident having the last 4 years and just figuring out what I'm doing. I mean, you can attribute it to like riding a bike. You really don't know what you're doing at first, but I feel like I can do it pretty well. And the community engagement piece that I talked about, like, really is important to me. It was important to me before, but I didn't know quite what I wanted that to look like. And I do now, and so moving forward, like I said, I really do want to have those boards and commissions filled and have more input.
Hi, Carrie.
Hey, David.
How's it going? Fair question, definitely. I guess the first thing I'll say is kind of already what Councilor Ward said. I know what I'm doing now for the most part, right? 4 years when you come as a new elected official, David's going to figure this out hopefully for him. It's really difficult to maneuver and interact with staff in a way that is productive and getting them motivated to do their jobs. And so I think what I didn't do as well before that I'm going to do better this next 4 years is promotion of state to legislators, being down at the legislature, talking about these projects that we got going on, trying to find infrastructure dollars, bringing them back to state to improve this community. I'm not a very good self-promoter. I'm not a CEO or anything like that. I work in state government, right? And so I don't know that as well. But over the last 4 years, I've kind of learned the right way to do that and the right way to showcase our small community and try to get that interest here. I think that, and then also leaning into criticism and things that we're not doing as well, and just getting a better understanding of those issues and putting aside defensiveness and trying to defend the city and what we're doing, more just, hey, what are the issues? What are you upset about? Trying to hear that from people instead of being quick to defend and explain ourselves. Just understanding where the passions are coming from first. So yeah, I think those are kind of the 2 things big sticking out of my mind. I hope that answers your question, Carrie.
It does.
Thank you.
Okay, second question, Mr. Quigley and Mr. Lewis. As mayor, as we know, the mayor's job is pretty simple. It's running meetings, unless you break a tie. I think we broke a tie, Hank, maybe twice in numerous years. How would you promote the city in other venues or other avenues or events to bring more people into our community?
I think working with those state legislators and the county so that they know what we need, so that they can help us get what we need. I think it's very important for us to be open and honest with those in the community, and so they trust us. Trust is huge. If you don't have trust, you pretty much lost the battle. And I think you're right. Most of the charter defined uses for the mayor is to run the city council meetings. But it goes further than that, because the mayor is the point person in the community, and they need to be out there. And I believe that I can do that.
That's a good response, Ralph. I will tell you, Carrie, that when I stepped away from the council in 2019, I've learned a lot about myself and my position on council. I will tell you, I'll be the first one to admit that I was a little bit myopic when it came to several issues. I trusted what was being told to me instead of verifying it for myself. I took a defensive posture a number of times on council. But at the end of the day, I always try to weigh it and try to listen to what the community had to say before making a decision. I wasn't always the most popular person at times, which is okay. That's not, I think that's an expectation of the position up here. But to answer your question about how would we get out there and try to be more transparent, that's exactly why I'm in this running for this. I think I would be out there and try to really promote what Stayton's all about. But again, it's that dichotomy we talked about. I don't want to come out there and really try to get all these people aware of Stayton, because I want to keep that little gem in place. So it's really trying to watch that balance, but at the same time, really try to highlight what the community is all about and why we all live there.
Well, thank you, and I just want to give a little shout out to Hank and thank him for all of his years of service. You were a great mayor. Thank you to all of you guys. It cannot be easy to be up here on the spot, only have 90 seconds. And so I appreciate all of your hard work tonight. Thanks. Who's next? Matt. Citizen Spinner.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Matt Spinner, owner brewer, Smoky Brewing, also a board member for the chamber and board chair elect for next year. So my question is for the chamber. How would you prioritize the city's relationship with the chamber?
I guess I see the Chamber of Commerce, again, not knowing fully exactly how all the ins and outs of the chamber and whatever politics can happen there. I think my own perception, rightly or wrongly, is that the Chamber of Commerce is kind of our PR unit. They should be showing us as a great place. They should be making sure that people know that we're not a bunch of nasty people out here who don't want them to come. You know, visit but don't stay, you know. But we want them to stay. We want them to be involved. And I think it's important. We were talking about embracing relationships. I think that's one that has to be embraced.
So I will tell you that, again, what I just acknowledged was some of my interpretations, if you will, over the years. And that's on both sides of the aisle. I think there's some healing that needs to be done on that relationship piece. I think there's some misinterpretation on that piece. I think at the same time, there's some opportunity for us to congeal a little bit more. I started that on my end with the meeting recently with the chamber president, and I think it gives us gives me a different perspective. It was laid out to me in a different way of looking at something, and I think that needs to occur on both ends. I will tell you that my long history of being on council and having that interaction with the chamber hasn't always been the most friendly at times, but definitely it's a possibility to get that going again. I think with the new city manager in spot, she's really outreach has been great. we've had a discussion and it's coming from council, and she's gonna come back and have that feedback to council, and I think there's gonna be an opportunity to have that strengthened relationship going forward at the council meetings. That's really important. Again, it's going back to more participation at the council meetings on all levels.
You know, I'm familiar with the chamber, you know, you know, I think that this is a really important relationship. You know, we talk about changing perceptions and changing what people think of an organization, and I think that over the last 4 years in particular, before, like, there has been this really shift about really seeing the chamber as just this leading advocate in the community, and this place that people really do have a very positive perception of largely, and I think there's been a shift of culture there, there's been really strong leadership there, and so I think there's a really good opportunity there as an entrance point into the business community and to attracting people here. I mean, the chamber mails out basically, I forgot what it's called, I should know this, right? Yeah, it's basically, for everyone who moves to our community, they're mailing out the magazine. They do this magazine, community magazine every year. It's a great resource in our community. They run the visitor center. There's a lot of ways I think that they're really helping connect our business. I'd really love to see that relationship grow as a city.
I really see the chamber as a valuable and integral part of our community. And like Ralph said, to his point, that we, as the city, we don't have a marketing budget. And the chamber has come to us and has done presentations on the work that they've done to really advocate for not just the businesses in the chamber, but for the community as a whole. As David pointed out, that visitors get packets, welcome packets for people who come to the community. It's not just the visitor center, so you really are that PR arm. And I advocated for the chamber to receive more money on the budget committee and in the council meeting, because really the dollars that the community or that Stayton spends as a member of the chamber really comes back to us in multitude, and I recognize and see that relationship. It is an integral relationship. I don't know where I was going with that. Thank you.
Let's see. Good question. Very good question. I would just say to that, Carmel, over my last 4 years, when did we start mending this fence, right? I think I came and met with you, recognizing that history that was already referenced, I'm not going to get into that, and then seeing if we could find a way forward, right? And so that's what I did. You know, she already referenced the budget committee. We fought about that pretty hard as to whether or not we were going to do that. But ultimately, it came down to what I said earlier. I don't remember which question this was, but identifying clear expectations with our partners, right? And so for me, that's being done at this point. Julia's doing a great job. I see a new chapter with the chamber moving forward, and I think that this partnership can be beneficial for both organizations in a lot of different ways, and that's going to benefit Stayton because of your promotion and networking with these businesses, and then us too, City of Stayton. I mean, you're promoting us too, like you've already said here. So I think that there's definite support that the city can offer, and you know, I'm open to what that looks like in the coming years. But yeah, I think that's how I would facilitate that, and just turn over a new leaf and tap that potential.
My perception with the relationship, I think it's a very important. They're both intertwined, and we talked about a lot of goals that we have here. We have some common goals. And I think that relationship was very, very important to, you know, foster that positive perception of Stayton as a, you know, place to do business growth. I just see a lot of our goals the same, and I think it's a very important relationship.
Thank you.
Other questions from the audience? Okay, thank you.
we're out of time for questions, but I just wanted to take a moment and thank Alyssa from the City of Stayton for recording tonight's forum. It's going to be available on YouTube and it will be posted to all of the Chamber social media channels probably early next week. Please feel free to share that resource, this forum, with others that were unable to be in attendance. And I also want to thank you candidates for making time in your schedule to come and share so the community can understand your values and perspective. And most importantly, I just want to thank you guys for showing up and engaging in this process. The future of our community rests in the hands of those who choose to get involved. So thank you for doing that, and we'll see you next time.